Hi everyone, I'm the German Grandmaster Georg Meier and I'm here to continue my series on the Catalan. And the topic today is the closed Catalan, where black hangs on to his d5 pawn in the center. And the game I want to show is my game against Ihsan Magami from Iran. Most of the time when I play the Catalan, I'm pleasantly surprised that people are ready to give up the center, giving up their pawn on d5 by taking on c4. I eventually recapture the pawn, and then I just enjoy control of the center and better mobilized pieces. So there is a very logical question. What happens if black just doesn't give way in the center? And that is our topic today. We reach the so-called closed Catalan at this point, when black decides to bolster his central pawn on d5 with the move c6. And of course we see that black is still a little bit cramped because, the bishop on c8 is kind of locked in. But black's plan is to play knight bd7, b6, bishop b7, and then eventually carry out c6, c5, and then just equalize structurally in the center and not worry about having less space. But it's time consuming. So today we go through an instructive game, since in any closed position it's more about the understanding of strategic ideas than about concrete moves. So here there are two good moves for white. One is knight c3, which is not the topic today. Today we are going to look at queen c2, and the point is that we are already having an eye on the c4 pawn, and at the same time we will try as quickly as possible to carry out the advance e2, e4 before black manages to mobilize and strike in the center with c6, c5. So black goes knight bd7, knight bd2, b6, everything normal, and now already white managed to push e4. And if black were to take on e4, the whole point of his opening strategy is kind of abandoned, because now again white has much more control of the center and simply stands a bit better. And still black has issues to carry out c6, c5 because b7 would be hanging. So let's go back to the position of the e4. Black goes bishop b7, and now of course stands ready to just play c6, c5. So here's a very important moment. White plays e5, grabs a lot of space on the king side, and gives black a problem piece for the rest of the game in most of the games that I've seen in this line. This knight on e8, it just doesn't have anywhere good to go. Basically, even if you put it on g7, it's kind of useless there. c7, a6, maybe one day through b8 you can get to c6. That's a very long route to get back into the game. And in the meantime, the black's coordination is simply disturbed. But it is important to play cd5 immediately here, because if we just wait one move, rook e1, black goes knight c7 and would always be ready to take back with the knight on d5. And next move he would go c5 and just blow open the center. So white goes cd5 here, cd5, rook e1, just freeing the f1 square to reroute the bishop. Rook c8 is natural enough. And now a cunning move, queen a4, to make it difficult for black to get his piece into the game. Therefore he goes a5, bishop f1. We are actually following a game of mind, so I have a good feeling of everything that happened. And my opponent, he went knight b8 in order to prepare bishop a6 and at least get rid of one bad piece. But it made more sense to do the same with knight c7 to have some hopes of getting this problem piece into the game eventually. After knight b8, I played a3, just anticipating that there will be a knight on a6 and not allowing it to jump into b4. I exchanged on a6. I continue with development. Now my c1 bishop is free, and then I can start occupying the c file. And now we see these knights, they're just standing on each other's toes, and still problems with coordination. They're both very ineffective. And as is natural, when you have more space on the king side, you should do something there. So I grab some more space with h4, having this point g5 now supported, queen e8. And if you think about what it means to have this extra guy on e5 cramping black's king side, it's only really useful if I keep the queens on, because then if I manage to have a lot of pieces on the king side, well, the one thing I want to attack is the black king. So without queens, black would have a much easier defensive task. So I just play queen d1. You see, all the game is evolving just around strategical ideas. I know that I'm happy with my position. I just want to develop my pieces, and eventually my space advantage will tell, because black just doesn't manage to use the time in a meaningful way, because, well, he made a lot of moves with the knights and they still stand on bad squares because he has so little space. Queen d7 connecting the rooks, bishop g5. Of course, black can never take on g5 because I would take back with the h-pawn, and then it's only a matter of time until I get a heavy piece onto the h-file, and then h7 will be extremely weak. And if black were to go, let's say h6, I would take on e7, play rook c1, and here I have two ideas. One is to double or triple on the c file, and then when black is completely cramped, I can eventually also think of playing g4, knight g3, some g5, and also attack black's king. So in the end, my opponent decided to play f6, just weakening his king now. Now we see that all these squares are weak around the black king. I mean g4, f4 more in terms of being available for white's pieces, and then they are very close to black's king that is already open. So I went bishop h6, rook f7, and now just natural development. Rook c1 occupying the open file, bishop d6. At least black has kind of a stronghold on c7, so I'm not going to overrun him yet on the c file, but he has no constructive plan. Queen c2, so now the c7 knight is pinned. There are always ideas of queen c6 also, that he just managed to keep under control. And with black so cramped, I have all the time in the world to just improve my position. And I figured out that this knight can be brought close to the black king and start attacking these exposed pawns. That's how I came to this maneuver. And eventually knight h5, attacking on f6, rook g6, and black's position turns out to be overloaded, or we just see that his pieces are not working together effectively, if I can make such an annoying move. And now this stronghold on c7 is already undermined. So slowly but surely I will now take down black's defenses. I went rook e3 to finally triple on the c file, rook e7. And when you control a file, your goal is to penetrate on the 8th or the 7th rank of your opponent, so rook c8. You see, black is just completely on the defense and has no counterplay ideas whatsoever. So I thought, let's give him a move, because in such a bad position it's really hard to make moves. I played king g2, just bolstering my kingside structure. And already instead of doing nothing, he went e5 and just opens up more squares to my pieces. Queen f5 is very logical, just jumping in there. Queen d7. Usually, when you have a lot of weaknesses, it gets much harder to defend them when the queens are off, because the queen is a piece that just covers so much. So I was happy to exchange queens here, and already the other rook can penetrate. And we see that everything in black's position is just under pressure. And it turned out that he has no moves even. So I could just calmly make progress on the queen side with the goal of fixing this weakness on b6. And now I understood that he's just gonna move back and forth with rook f7, rook e7. So at this point I decided to use that I know his next move. I played king f1, anticipating rook f7 and now starting the decisive maneuver of bringing this guy also into the attack. And it's quite fitting that he will also land on squares that have been weakened by f6 and then subsequent g takes f6. So black took on d4, now knight g4 comes with tempo, since knight h6 was threatened, knight f5. And fittingly, my opponent resigned at this point, because now I have all the pieces perfectly placed and he realized that here he simply has no moves to play. I would pick up b6 and then calmly just promote the pawn. So why was this game so easy? You remember at the point where I went e5, knight e8, I said that this guy is the real problem piece for black. And it remained so until the very end. He's still there. So I hope you took away some important strategic ideas from this game and feel more ready to face the structure as black.